When Sega doesn't make the games you want to see, fan games swoop in to give you experiences like nothing you've ever seen. I mean, where else are you supposed to get a game that lets you play as a forklift certified Dr. Robotnik? Or a game that makes you survive 5 nights at Sonic's? When it comes to fan games, the possibilities are endless. But in this video, I'll be looking at a game that had a lot of controversy surrounding its upbringing, Sonic Omens. Something that this video will be looking past to instead talk about the game itself. From levels to the story, I want to take a look at this game as a complete package and tell you what I think of this project as a whole. However, before we get into that, do you want the chance to win $20? I know I do. Well, you can do just that, as I'm currently having my first giveaway. To enter is simple. All you have to do is join my Discord server, link in my bio, and that's it. Once my channel hits 4,000 watch time hours and I become a full YouTube partner, 3 people in my Discord will be drawn at random to receive one of 3 $20 Visa gift cards. So, what are you waiting for? Head to my bio and join today. And without further ado, let's talk about the infamous Sonic Omens. For a little context, Sonic Omens is a fan game with a chapter-by-chapter development process that ran into some controversy when they had locked one of the chapter updates behind a Patreon paywall. With people getting worried about Sega's response to this, people started canceling the game. But even still, the game had completed and all of the chapters to this title are available for download over on GameJolt. This is a modern Sonic title that takes a lot of inspiration from games like Sonic Adventure 2, Sonic Unleashed, and Sonic X especially. This 7-episode title was developed in Unreal Engine, and it shows through its beautiful graphics, looking a lot better than even most official Sonic titles. However, looks alone aren't enough to make a game stand on its own. So how does the rest of this game stack up? Well, we start off the game in the first chapter, The Breakthrough. As we pan over a desk full of references from some of the earliest Sonic titles, we land on Sonic himself, who gets his sleep disturbed by Tails, who shows off his radio which alerts of Eggman doing Eggman things as Eggman do. Sonic, ready for some action, hops to his feet as we get to explore Sonic's room.
Mobify? I bet you don't even pay for Mobify Premium!
Getting a feel for the controls, I'm pleasantly surprised with not only how the game feels, but also the mapping of the controls the developer used, mirroring the best parts of Frontier's controls.
She's ready yet. In the meantime, I suggest warming up. The frequent naps and chili dog contests have made you gain a few pounds.
Tails is fat shaming me?
I could use the cardio.
After getting fat shamed by Tails, we make our way over to the start of the first stage. Which, the stage, while having some hiccups in the design...
Oh, did I just break it? Oh no, okay. So do I have to wait for it now? Or can I... Yeah, I have to wait for it.
Does a really good job at showing you all the movement techs you need to master to the levels of this game. The level itself is also really nice, as it feels like you're running through a small village, instead of just a stage. This level goes a long way to bring the surrounding area to life, and it's a nice touch as it makes everything feel lived in. And with Angel Island being shown off in the distance, it helps make the locations feel as if they're connected and not just places that exist on their own. Also in the cutscene, we get to see the fellow inhabitants of the small island, which are the custom character models and forces, which was a nice touch. However, as Tails flies around the island, we lock in on Knuckles as he's worried about the incoming storm. Breaking back to Sonic, who is now in the storm, gets bombarded by gun robots falling from the sky. Waking up, we get an introduction to Sonic's newest ability, a swinging mechanic brought to us by Chip. But that doesn't matter, as I plead to the heavens for someone to hire me to voice Sonic.
Trust me, I would rather have my feet planted.
Oh man, I need to voice Sonic in something. Man, I need to have my feet planted. Guys, I'd make a great Sonic. Please, someone hire me. Like, it may seem like a joke, but nothing is higher on my bucket list than being the voice actor for Sonic in some project. I'd do the blue blur justice. But Before this just becomes a video with me wallowing on my knees, pleading to voice Sonic in something, we get into our next level that introduces the swinging mechanic and a multi-attack. As we blast through this well-constructed level, we get a call from Amy as she gets mad at Sonic for forgetting their date.
Sonic! I am so excited for our picnic today!
Amy? Oh, that was today?
Sonic! How can you be such a hero and yet so irresponsible at the same time?
Sorry, Amy. Going through a tunnel.
That's
A small detail that goes a long way in making the characters' relationships feel real, reminding me of the Insomniac Spider-Man games, which is a pretty big compliment in my eyes. As we get into the next cutscene, we get more proof of the creators' care for the relationships of the Sonic cast, as Sonic is given time to talk with Tails just like the buds they are, being interrupted by our first boss, a broken down Egg Dragoon. This first boss was a blast. Not only were the attacks and the window to fight back well choreographed, but as the fight continued, the boss would add on new attacks, a great start for the bosses in the series. As we recover a hard drive, we return to Tails' lab, where, after taking off in the tornado, we conclude Chapter 1. This first chapter was a good introduction to the game. While not perfect for reasons I'll get into, it's still a good starting point for this adventure. There are some issues, like the smallest amount of game jank, but what Sonic game doesn't have that? I also feel there is a disconnect in some of the world design to level design, as there's a small instance where the world building gets in the way of the level structure. However, I don't think it's enough so far that it ruins the experience. There is still a lot of good that comes from these things. Sonic's world feels very interconnected. These locations feel not only lived in, but as if they exist together within all of Sonic's world. And if that hinders the level in small ways, then that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make as of right now. Another issue I have is that I'm not too invested in the plot as a whole yet. We get some nods to the storm coming in, but that happens in every round of Fortnite, so what makes this one so special? We also learn Eggman is up to something, but it also doesn't evoke too much from me, more just like Eggman has to be doing something. And I hear what a lot of you might be saying.
This is a fan game. It's not gonna be on the same standards of an official release.
But this is my review. This title was released by someone who wanted to tell a story and craft their own game. And so I'm going to judge it as the project it is, not limiting what I say because of its fan project status. Because even for what doesn't work in the story as a whole for me right now, gets made up for in what I believe to be this first chapter's strongest feature, the character interactions. The relationships between these characters feel real, as if they have history with each other, rather than just being actors in their next paid gig. Giving the characters time in the levels and cutscenes to just talk to each other goes a long way in making this feel like the characters' next outing together. But let's see how all these points progress as we make our way into Chapter 2, Temple of Sands. Flying Sonic into Zone 99, he hops out of the plane, leading us into our first level of the chapter, starting on the outside of Gun's military base. We trash their defenses as we make our way inside. This level shows a great amount of care, as not only design-wise does it feel as if I'm making my way through a military base, but there are a multitude of paths, making this a great stage for repeat playthroughs. But as we make our way to the center, we find a disturbing shrine.
Is that f***ing Cthulhu?
As we cut to Tails, we get a taste for the Sonic Omens take on the tornado sections.
Okay, I think I'm getting that. Tails is dead.
While having quite a few difficulties getting the hang of how I'm supposed to use the controls, I realized it's not my fault.
As an airplane, I feel like they have not made enough accommodations for me, and knowing that it's 2024, I think I could probably sue for that. Anyone else want to join my class action lawsuit?
So, pushing through the adversity of my new plane identity, I prevail through my final stretch where the writings on the wall tell of the danger we truly are in.
Those creatures on the drawing.
Ah, shit. So now we have to deal with Cthulhu and furries? Damn. I'm not sure I'm powerful enough for furries.
Finally making my way to the end.
Yeah! I did it! Oh. Oh, I got a negative time bonus. That's crazy.
Cause I did really bad on this level. We finally run into Eggman as he scoops up the Chaos Emerald, awakening a beast that punts Eggman.
Oh, Eggman's dead.
Seeing the severity of the situation, Sonic and Tails take the tornado as they rush out of the cave, needing to evade as the snake-like beast bursts through the walls blocking our way. This level was perfectly tense as you are stuck in tight corridors as this ginormous beast hunts you down. But as we burst through the exit of the cave, we shift from flight to fight as we need to shoot down the throat of this beast as he launches himself towards us. Taking care of him, Sonic grabs the emerald to then chase down Eggman as he heads for the next one.
Yeah, because getting the first one went so well for him.
Cutting back to the Shrine of Cthulhu, we get a mysterious monologue from a shadowed figure as he makes mention of a Thorndyke.
Oh, Thorndyke, like Chris?
And traces the wall.
Chaos. Just the first omen.
Okay. Felt very sexual.
Cutting back to Sonic and Tails as they chase Eggman, Gun shoots down one of the engines on the tornado. Sonic, thinking fast, hops out, running into the end of the chapter. This chapter added a whole new element into the gameplay with the tornado section, and for the most part, I really like it. Although there are some issues I have with the enemy difficulty.
Why are we keeping Sonic away?
Wait, if that's the case,
Oh, why am I dead?
what is Gun really?
Okay, that was my bad.
Sonic, help!
Yeah, there's no helping that. Okay, so it can just... What? No, don't shoot me. Don't shoot me.
Which could honestly be boiled down to a skill issue. I actually really like this tornado section. And I could honestly say that I enjoy it more than any of the official Sega tornado sections that come to mind. Especially in the 3D games. Where this tornado section succeeds for me, where all these others don't, is in the controls. In Sega's take of these levels, you usually are flying on a track where you only have to focus on shooting the enemies ahead of you. Whether it be with a lock-on missile or my worst enemy, QTEs, I've personally just never found these stages to be fun. Really just feeling like filler more than anything. So now you've got Omen's tornado sections where you are put into a canyon where you have to dodge and evade through the level design and enemies. That freedom to move around the level freely is really what makes the tornado sections work on their own for me. And restricting the levels to being canyons is really smart on the creator's part to deal with the issue of if players were to try and go in any direction they aren't supposed to. So in all, I can finally say I have a tornado section that I like. And when it comes to the new Sonic stage, I could easily say this is one of my favorites so far, as the challenge is well built and the stage tells a story as you play through it with its design details, which I really appreciate. When it comes to the story, however, I can't say that I'm too invested in it still. There are nice elements such as the snake, and the other mother's hand is pretty cool, but none of it's really making me shit myself in anticipation for what's next. But that feels like a small complaint for everything this second chapter excels at, as I feel like the second chapter has peaked when it comes to the gameplay. But let's see how this trend continues into the third chapter, White Jungle. Starting off in White Jungle, Sonic's first stage is absolutely stunning. The rain and the night really just stands out with all the greens and blues that they use. A visually impressive level complemented by impressive level design that doesn't quite reach the heights of Area 99, but still stands on its own as a solid inclusion. Making our way to the next level, we reach an interesting choice level-wise where Sonic needs to reach the top of the tree to find the Chaos Emerald before Eggman, where one wrong step sends you back to the bottom, and honestly, this level doesn't really do it for me. falling to the bottom doesn't bother me, but what does is the level design itself. Throughout the level, there are sections where you have to hit switches to unlock springs and similar items to reach higher paths. But after the first one, the following switches weren't even necessary to reach the top. As much as I like branching paths in Sonic games, the linear climb to the top of the tree doesn't pair well with multiple paths you can unlock, as hitting buttons for things I never ended up using just made the level feel disjointed. But as we reach the top and collect the next Chaos Emerald, the next level more than makes up for it, not only being absolutely stunning, but as you're tasked with trying to get out of the tree as it floods, it makes this stage action-packed, as you have to quickly choose your paths before getting drowned out. So outside of some unique instances,
What just happened?
this level made for an incredibly fun conclusion to the White Jungle stages. But as we narrowly escape by hitching a ride with Tails, a reaction from the emeralds make Tails lose control as he plummets towards the forest. Crashing, we cut to Shadow and his first level. Shadow's first level takes place in a training facility, which is fitting seeing that there are a lot of new moves to learn with him. Movement controls are about all you get that feel similar between Sonic and Shadow, as Shadow gets an arsenal of new Chaos abilities, such as Spears, which allow you to shoot projectiles, Control that slows time, Blast, which clears rooms, and Dash, which to everyone's surprise lets you dash forward. In concept, these moves are all cool, but in practice, I feel like they overcomplicate the playstyle. A bit of a spoiler alert, but throughout playing through Shadow's campaign, I feel the moves never really complemented each other. They are all given a chance to stand. Some moves more than others, like Chaos Control, as it gave me the edge I needed to cross fast-moving platforms, and I think it was executed fairly well. But for the other moves, I don't feel like they were used enough to justify making them mechanics and overcomplicating Shadow's gameplay. With how little the moves needed to be used throughout Shadow's levels, or even used in conjunction with each other, I felt as if they could have narrowed down the roster and put a bigger focus on just one or two of the moves, making more platforms tailored to the one or two instead of stretching the segments out in the little stages we get in this title to compensate for all the moves. I feel like this falls to a creator's decision though, as it is their game, and I'm sure you can use the moves to maximize efficiency throughout the levels, but one of Sonic's core principles is ease of control, where as far back as the first Sonic game on the Genesis, you only had two buttons you needed to learn, being the jump button and the D-pad. Sega's philosophy being that they wanted anyone to be able to pick up the game and play it, but wanted the challenge to be mastering the levels, not the controls. And as the games progressed, things did get more complicated over time, especially with Superstars. But then look at Superstars Emerald's powers. The biggest complaint I have seen is that they overcomplicate the game by adding the plethora of abilities, with most of them being completely unneeded, which I think Omens handles their Chaos abilities better than Superstars handles the Emerald abilities. And obviously, again, this is not a Sega game, and these things are up to the creator. But just some food for thought when you're constructing a Sonic-themed game. Getting back on track though, we watch as Shadow is confronted by a shadowed boardroom of gun officials, as the edgy Coraline hand from before hands a Chaos Emerald to Shadow, as we see a familiar shaped eye that's awfully similar to the certain enemy we meet in Sonic X, ending the episode. This episode as a whole has a lot of highs, but at the same time, I also feel like some issues are starting to arise. The level design in the White Jungle level, while being the most visually impressive, also sort of hinders itself from the branching paths on a linear climb as I talked about earlier. And also as I talked about, Shadow to me felt overcomplicated, to a point where I almost feel as they wanted to make Shadow feel massively different from Sonic, and their solution was adding a buttload of Chaos abilities. Which, these things don't inherently ruin the game, and for some it might not even seem like a problem. But to me, the tree's overcomplicated roots and the addition of Shadow's abilities mess with the cohesion of the game for me. It's almost like you're mixing puzzle pieces together from different boxes and trying to make one image. And in my opinion, and one more time for the people in the back, my opinion, I just don't think it works as well as it could. Like, if they were to focus in on Shadow's chaos control and make obstacles tailored to this move, it would have made Shadow a lot more distinct from Sonic just by that, and made him a lot more simple to master, putting the focus back into mastering the levels. When it comes to the story itself, I still can't say that I'm invested on where this is going. This may just be a me thing, but I don't feel any tension in the story beats, and it really feels like it's lacking its punch. And I'm sure this story is probably someone's favorite Sonic story ever told, and I'm happy that you have that. But to me, I just feel like I'm watching events. Like, I see Gunn as working with this clearly villainous character, and I'm not asking why, but I'm more asking why. Like, I'm not asking why are the good guys working for/with this guy, but more of a, why does Gunn let this guy have so much control, and why does this evil guy even need to be using Gunn? My questions more stem from a place of, this doesn't really seem like the thing these people would do, and it makes me question character intentions in writing. Obviously fan game, but also the flow of the story just doesn't feel completely polished. I feel that there are different things you could do with the story to better build tension and intrigue, rather than saying they're doing mysterious, intense things. But as we are coming closer to the end of this adventure, we'll see how all these things progress in episode 4, Shadow of Water. Riding into battle, Shadow rampages through swarms of enemies, calling Rouge to get his mission location, leading us into Moldy Jungle, a visually unique stage with purples and blacks that also adds a variety of new gameplay gimmicks as you have to make your way through rooms of fog so thick you aren't able to breathe, and use your spears to open switches on the echidna pedestals. All was pretty normal until...
You approaching me?
Wait, was that a motherfucking JoJo reference? But as I reach the end, Shadow has a vision of Maria before losing his emerald in a trench, awakening a beast for Shadow to slay. The vortex starts in a cave where you can't breathe, needing to balance attacking and grabbing air bubbles, all while evading the boss's attacks. As we strike him down to half health, the water starts to rise, and it's a race out of the cave as the boss destroys objects around me, trying to prevent me from moving. Escaping from the cave, we land into our final arena to finish off this Cthulhu wannabe, laying waste to the boss after my first try. Shadow is confused by what the beast he just fought was, but interrupted by Eggman flying by, he goes to track him down, wasting no time as we end this chapter. This chapter felt pretty short compared to the others before it, as there really was only a level and a boss. However, the time I spent on it exceeded the time of the other levels, and that's because of the rise of difficulty. This episode was easily more difficult than the ones before it, as you have a lot more to juggle in the levels and bosses. And as of right now, I would say that the difficulty is fair. A lot of the things I felt like I had trouble dealing with, I would say came from a skill issue rather than anything the level did wrong. These more complex levels, while not perfect, are still pretty fun. And the story, well, it's still happening. And I'm sure it'll continue to happen as we get into Episode 5, The Exiled. We start with Eggman stealing the Chaos Emeralds from a passed-out Sonic of Tails, kinda reminding me of Sonic Adventure. As Sonic wakes up, he tries to wake Tails, only for Shadow to come start talking trash to him. So as they smack their balls together, Tails lets off a warning shot as they break off, going after Eggman and the emeralds. Playing as Shadow again, we start in his first level, United Railroad, where the jungle's overgrowth starts to tear apart the railway as we have to get through, using Chaos Control to get through some of the stage hazards, while other hazards were a little more jank than I would appreciate. There was still a lot to appreciate with this level design, even if we're getting to a point of what seems to be less polished than what was in the beginning of the game. As we use our Chaos Dash, we get onto the train, where we bust through doors noticing Sonic already made it on. This train section was a lot of fun, as you have to make your way across the top of the train as you avoid platforms zooming by, till we finish the level getting bombarded by one of Eggman's machines. Flashing to white as Shadow is shown an image of Maria, Sonic chases down Eggman, as Shadow is ordered to go back to headquarters and allow Gun to take control of the situation. Cutting to Eggman, we see that he's desperate to win, mentioning that he can't afford to lose. Playing as Sonic, it's a race across the highway as we wait for Eggman to open up to attack in between his own attacks. As we ground his bird, Gun pulls up, detaining Eggman and confiscating the emeralds from Sonic to his opposal, only for our big bad to finally reveal himself as the Exiled. As his Metarex bots go and destroy all the gun robots around them, Sonic pleads to Exile, but Shadow knocks out Sonic and gives Exile his emerald. Really pissing me off because this dude is so clearly evil, and a couple visions of Maria are not enough to make me believe Shadow would be okay with this, especially when all we've seen her do is call out Shadow's name. But as Sonic reawakens, he finds himself in a grassy area with a beam of light ahead of him. Running along the path, we close in towards the end to see someone standing close to the edge of a cliff as he starts yapping about connected worlds, until he shows his face, revealing himself as Chris Thorndike, everyone's favorite character from Sonic X, as the episode ends. Very eventful episode, as we learn of the Metarex and Chris's involvement with the story. We also get hints that Eggman isn't up to anything notorious as usual, with his character seeming more panicked as he's trying to prevent something. This episode does quite a bit for the story, which makes sense as we're getting closer to the end, even though I still can't say I'm for the story, especially when we have moments like this.
Wait. Stop. Give them back.
Shadow, what a asshole.
But I do think it is ramping up nicely for its conclusion, as you can start to see the stakes on the table. As for the levels, we get some brilliant level themes, between rushing through a corrupting train station to make it to a train, to racing across the tops of the train, trying to make it to the front, or even Sonic's boss as he races across a highway as it gets more destroyed as the boss furthers on. Even though I feel like I'm consistently hitting more poor level design moments, the theming helps pick up the slack of those moments. But we'll see if these issues get better as we dive into episode 6, Worlds Colliding. Waking up to see Tails' face, Sonic is distraught in Shadow's choices, only to be interrupted by Eggman sitting in a chair close to him. Learning that Eggman helped Sonic escape, they begin to talk, where we learn that Chris, in trying to better the world, teams up with a Metarex, unknowingly setting the stage for the Exiled to take advantage of Chris's work upon his passing. We also learn that the beasts we have encountered are byproducts of an impending doom related to the Chaos Emeralds. None of them being satisfied by this, decide to temporarily team up to take down the Exiled and save the world. But before we can embark on this adventure, Sonic takes a moment to look out on his world as we cut to the different inhabitants, as we see them all in distress about their impending doom. The first stage we find ourselves in is a tornado level, where due to the lower power levels of the tornado, because of damage it has sustained previously, we have to stick to the chasms. Making it through this beautifully dystopian level, we get to deal with new insta-kill hellfire, insta-kill spinning lasers, rooms filled to the brim with enemies that don't go down easily, but you have to clear to progress, as well as enemies that laser beam you and you can't evade even with your barrel rolls. To then make it on a final stretch as we evade one of the beasts as we make it to the Metarex's lava lamp base. This level was not my favorite. The multiple insta-kill obstacles in that damned enemy room were not fun to deal with. Maybe it's a skill issue, but in reality, I just feel like a lot of the deaths felt unfair. The best part of this level was the final chase, as we had to go through tunnels to evade the giant bird. But outside of that, I was left more frustrated than anything. As we finish the level, we cut to Shadow as he confronts Maria, as we start an EDM rave boss fight against her. As I play on, I could only hope for one thing.
Is this gonna end with me shooting her?
But as we get through attack patterns, drones show up, where upon breaking them, we deal chunks of damage to the boss.
Wait, I didn't get to kill her?
Damn it! Ah, Maria. All I ever wanted was to kill you.
Instead of getting to kill her, the illusion fades as the Exiled reveals himself as the visions that have plagued Shadow, learning that the Exiled was using them as a way to trick Shadow into helping him, so that in turn Shadow's mind could be freed. Angered by this realization, Shadow uncuffs his inhibitors, ready to go head to head with Exiled. As we cut back to Sonic and Tails, Tails shoots off a missile for Sonic to ride into the base as he guides Ember away from him, leading us to the Citadel of Lotus, our last stage. And as a final stage, it was tense, and sometimes not in the best ways. This level does a lot right, with great platforming sections and beautiful design. However, there are sections that almost feel like artificial difficulty, like a water room that could have used rings to space it out better, or a cluster of Metarex that need to be defeated before being able to progress, which, when they all electrify you at once and make it where you can't move after they hurt you, it's frustrating to have to replay it. There was also an insta-kill laser that was put in a space where you could not consistently avoid it, leading to quite a few deaths. As frustrating as those things were, this level still overall was so fun and had a lot of charm to it, being a solid conclusion to our levels. Reaching the center of the base, we find Exile as he begins his machine, and as it starts breaking the Chaos Emeralds one by one, Sonic pushes himself through an invisible force field, slowly chipping away at it, breaking through it just in time to retrieve the 7th emerald before it was destroyed. Getting tossed around by Exiled's nasty-ass weave, weakened by the damage he sustained, Sonic struggles to get free from Exile's grasp. Unable to move, we find out Exile's true motivation is just to return home. But to do so means to destroy everything. Too busy yapping, Exile doesn't notice as Shadow throws a spear into the machine, blowing it up. Released from Exile's grasp, Sonic begins to descend to the ground as Chip's light engulfs Sonic, awakening him into his super state, only to be almost immediately knocked out of his form by Exile, ending the episode. This episode had quite a bit of ups and downs, a lot of the time being in the same level. There is a lot of additional difficulty added into the stages that at times just felt so unfair and frustrating to get through. But that is also coupled with some of the best stage design we have seen, from the theming to the platforming in Sonic's level. And even though there are things I would change to make the levels feel more fair, these stages make for a strong conclusion to this story. And speaking of the story, it's alright. There is definitely a sense of agency to the characters as they all face what could be the end of time as they know it. But I'll save my final thoughts until after we get through episode 7, The Last Omen. This last episode is our final showdown against Exile, where Sonic needs to build up his energy bar to re-access his super state. The only problem is on top of boosting, draining the bar, so does any damage you take, putting you right back to zero. For the first 13 minutes of the fight, it just felt hopeless, as I raged about the game, saying things that weren't entirely true.
See, it won't. Jesus! Get over yourself! And then the.
But then there came an understanding. Wait, I can build this off of these? And from here, the tides would start to turn. As I started chipping more and more health away from him during each attempt, the end seemed in reach. And people took notice as I had followers and subscribers join my live, reminiscing their hardship with this boss, many not being able to complete it themselves. Now fighting this boss for more than myself, but for those who couldn't, my resolve was as strong as ever. Until...
Let's go. Yeah, take that, you son of a...
I did it. I made it through... Shit, there's a second phase. As the shadows of all the omens surround our final battleground, I only get one chance to properly use my super form, each hit taking 10 rings along with what already naturally depletes. Needing to build up my energy bar to open Exile up for attack was a lot more difficult than it would seem, especially when you get hit by attacks you definitely dodged. But as I break through it all, I lay the smackdown of his life.
Yes! Let's go!
And we claim victory.
This is just my Sonic Omens!
Right? Is that what people wanted?
Collapse to the floor, Exile confides in us his desire to have gone back home one last time as the light fades from his eyes. As the omens group together, Sonic approaches them, taking Chip's bracelet and destroying it, repairing his world. In a now peaceful world, our heroes enjoy the scene as Sonic asks Eggman what he was trying to use time travel for, something he mentioned earlier, only for him to say it's a story for another time, ending Sonic Omens. Sonic Omens is a bag of ups and downs, with more ups than downs, admittedly. Starting with the downs, the levels towards the end of the game had a lot of what I almost want to call artificial difficulty. There were a lot of areas that felt like they were unfair to play through, such as clusters of enemies that when they attack you, make it where you aren't able to escape after they hit you the first time, or insta-kill areas that sometimes happen at nearly unavoidable times. It was very frustrating to deal with and led to a lot of anger towards the end of my playthrough. There's also the story, which this is a more personal problem, as I feel there is going to be plenty of people who might even say this is their favorite Sonic story, and that's great. But for me personally, a lot of the beginning didn't invest me, so when we got to the back half of the game, even once it started to pick up, I wasn't enthralled into the story. Maybe this is because I'm not super invested into the Metarex, never having watched the full season they were in, but the story just didn't connect with me. I will say that Exile's final moments did almost make me feel sympathetic for the guy, even though he was just trying to destroy the world, but that was due to the amazing talent of Exile's voice work. Which leads me to the final issue I wanted to talk about, voice acting. This game is a fan project, and a lot of the voices are done by people who have accents. So while characters don't sound exactly like their game counterparts, that's not my issue with it. My issue falls into the line delivery. A lot of the lines in this game don't really feel like they were acted out, but instead were just read in the character's voice, which takes away from the impact some lines can have when the inflection given with their delivery don't match with the tone being presented. However, voice acting is a really difficult job, much more than what's given credit for. Being able to convey a character's morals, motivation, feelings, all with just your voice is an incredibly difficult task. So that's why I haven't been too hard on the cast, because it would seem that they're still kind of novice in that aspect, and it can't be any easier trying to voice act as a character. But it's still a prevalent thing that I saw many people talking about throughout my time streaming, so I knew it was something I needed to bring up. However, when it comes to the good, there are a plethora of examples. This game clearly had a lot of love poured into it from the creators. Not only were the environments really creative and beautiful, the stages themselves had a lot of unique design, multiple pathways, unique obstacles, and all of it built into the stage's theme, so that in instances it feels like you're invading the military base, not just playing a level with military design. Even in the most frustrating parts, I could still find parts of the level that were innovative and oftentimes better than the average Sega Sonic stage. Not to mention, this game is fully 3D. Something Sega had never been able to do after the introduction of the boost formula until recently with Sonic Dream Team, making this a really special work. accomplishing things not even Sega has mastered with the boost formula. This is also complemented on how well the controls are implemented. I've talked about my thoughts on Shadow's chaos abilities, and I do still agree with what I've said personally, but that's not to say that the base of the moveset feels great to use. It is on par with how Sonic games should feel, and to that I give this game massive props, because without such an important foundation, this game wouldn't have even been able to stand on its own. I mean, look at Sonic 06. They failed on how the characters feel and play, being a buggy mess, and it hinders the enjoyment of what I personally find to be some of the best Sonic stages in the series, especially comparing to how fun the stages are in Project 06, where the characters just feel good to play as. But in all, Sonic Omens is a game with a lot of promise, standing out with great level design with engaging obstacles. And although the game is infamous for its controversy throughout its development, I still believe the game itself is worth looking past the controversy and giving a shot, as there is a lot to love here. But tell me what you think. Have you played this title yet? If so, what are your thoughts on the game? And while you're at it, you should consider subscribing, as I'd love to be able to bring you content for years to come, especially with my new podcast series coming out soon. I hope you tune in to hear me talk with Chubby Tone over a variety of topics. But with that, I'm on page 16 of the script, as it has taken me days to get this thing ready for y'all. So I really hope you've enjoyed what I've made for you. Now, I'm going to go faceplant into my bed and hibernate until the next video I make for y'all. So, as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.